Yeah. Oh, no, I didn't. I brought your tools home. You're downstairs on the porch. Well, it's because I brought them home last night. So. Yeah, so not last night, the earlier in the afternoon.
Oh, it's I was looking for them, but I didn't look on the porch. I decided to come on the stairs, but wasn't that. I managed to do my electric screwdriver instead. Right.
I have some pumpkins that might join the meeting, I think.
Okay, good. Kind of cat? Kind of cat little? Is this cat your one? Oh. Alright.
I have two of these all the time. I'm not sure what happens.
And so I'll add that to the calendar. And then anything else we need to add to the calendar, I need to find out about the,
I'm gonna look at. the
Philo
budget.
and Roar's conference dates, because I don't know.
We don't have our conference date for 2023 yet.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Terrell.
And save as many of these as possible.
So I'm just gonna put you on speaker so you can hear, okay? Mhm. Oh, great.
Regina, can you hear me? Okay, good.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I hear you. We will begin in 2 to 3 minutes.
Good morning, Regina.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. So happy to see everyone. We will begin in just a few minutes.
Unser Hope kommt von Gott.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, everyone. I see we have a few people still signing on, so if you would be patient for just 1 to 2 more minutes, we will get started. Thank you.
Thank you.
For those that were not able to see the chat, or if you've not had time, if you would be so kind to add your name, your congregation, and the role in the chat so that our secretary, David Antill, can record your attendance. We are recording this session. However, he is requesting your name, your congregation, and your role in the chat. Thank you so very much. And with that, I see that we have 39 in attendance. So I think to be in order with your time, because you were on time, we want to be able to go ahead and get started. We have one additional item today, and that will be one song by Joseph Luat from Montclair. And so we will add him right after the break. If you will insert a song right after the break before the stewardship moment, so kindly to your agenda. Good morning, everyone. I'm Regina Glenn Caldwell. I am the moderator for the CMA, and so very happy and grateful to serve for the Chicago Metropolitan Association. Welcome to our spring meeting 2022. We know that it's normally in May, but the first Saturday in May was Mother's Day weekend. So we had to make sure that we were able to get the majority of the persons interested in attending and those who were participating today to get a date that will work for everyone. So we landed on today. So we're very grateful for your patience, knowing that we went into another month but so wonderfully blessed that you are with us today. I'm going to ask if you would be so kind to mute your devices so that the persons who are speaking will be able to speak and not hear outside conversations. Thank you so much for your compliance. With that, let us begin. I will bless the Lord at all times. God's praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul shall make her boast in the Lord. The humble shall hear thereof and be glad. Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt God's name together. Let us pray. Oh, Holy One, we come before you this day, thanking you as we come into your presence. We honor you for this particular time that you have chosen for our CMA Spring Meeting, as we welcome your Holy Spirit to set the atmosphere for a wonderful and an awesome time today. We just ask that you use us and continue to use us to your glory. It's not because we have been so perfect or because we have done things that we think others thought we should have done, but it's because of your faithfulness that you continue to bless us in spite of ourselves. Use us to your glory, and we will be so very careful to give you all the praise, the glory, and the honor you so richly deserve. For it's in the precious name of Jesus that we offer this prayer. And for those who love God said, amen. We will now be blessed by the morning music, Give Me Jesus. After that, we will have our reflection by Reverend Jason Coulter. I'm not hearing music, Jason. Thank you. There is no sound. Jason, would you please unmute yourself? Maybe we might be able to hear the sound. Thank you.
There we go. Try now.
Jason, we don't see or hear it. You may have to go out and reshare your screen and make sure you click the box that share audio.
Okay. I'm clicking on new share.
You're currently sharing your screen.
Yep. Can somebody help me get the audio on?
Yes, if you go out of share screen entirely,
Okay. Stop share.
go back into share screen.
Yep.
And when you, there's an option near
Share sound. I
share
see it.
sound. There you go. And then when you share the video, the video player.
Thanks for your help, everybody. Let's try it again. It's a good song. It's worth it.
You're sharing the wrong screen because we don't see the video.
I don't see the video. Lord have mercy. Still not seeing it?
No, we see your
2022
file,
spring
your
meeting.
file manager.
Okay. Then I'm gonna go one more time back over here. Screen. Share. How about
There we
now?
go. We see and hear.
Thank the Lord.
Oh, when I am alone, oh, when I am alone, oh, when I am alone, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, you may have all the world, but give me Jesus. Oh, when I come to die, oh, when I come to die, oh, when I come to die, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, you may have all this world, but give me Jesus. Oh, when I want to sing, oh, when I want to sing, oh, when I want to sing, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, you may have all this world, but give me Jesus.
Amen.
Well, it took a little while for Jesus to get to you, but I hope it landed for you powerfully, meaningfully, and spiritually. So thanks, everybody. And again, my apologies for being slow on the landing of the video. So greetings. My name is Jason Coulter. I'm the senior minister of First Congregational Church of Evanston. I chair the Congregational Life Committee for the CMA. It's a blessing to be with you here this morning. We settled on as our theme around healing the church and healing the people, and with a focus on mental health near the tail end of this pandemic and all the challenges, we felt it was appropriate that we have a message this morning that fits with our theme. And so I've been tasked with sharing some good news with you that comes today from the Gospel of Mark. We're going to hear one of Jesus's healing stories where he heals a man with unclean spirits. This is from the 5th chapter of Mark, verses 1 through 12. So Jesus came to the other side of the lake, to the country of the Gerasenes. And when he had stepped out of the boat, immediately a man out of the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. He lived among the tombs, and no one could restrain him anymore, even with a chain, for he had often been restrained with shackles and chains, but the chains he wrenched them apart, and the shackles he broke in pieces, and no one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always howling and bruising himself with stones. Now, when he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and bowed down before him, and he shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." For he had said to him, Jesus had said, "Come out of that man, you unclean spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" And he replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Back in 1981, the American poet and short story writer Raymond Carver published What We Talk About When We Talk About Love, a collection of stories that explored the complexity and the challenge of love. Since the very development of human language, human beings have found many ways and many words to express the profound feelings of love one person can have for another. We know Shakespeare wrote sonnets. Songwriters have crafted lyrics, and writers like Raymond Carver pick up the pen and put on paper what we feel when we are touched by the bright, burning light of love. It seems we have many ways to talk about love. The ancient Greeks also had many ways to talk about love. In the New Testament, we got 8 distinct words for love: eros, philos, agape love, that capture the many different relationships and feelings that can be housed in the great tent of affection and amour. You see, the writers of the New Testament knew how to talk about love, but it seems that they did not know how to talk about mental illness. In the healing stories of Jesus, we hear time and time again about people afflicted with unclean spirits or those possessed by demons. The people who populate our Bible did not have the science or medicine and language to describe and diagnose mental illness. They were limited in that regard and bound up by suspicion and ignorance. Now, from our vantage point 2,000 years later, we can read these stories like the one today from Mark and try to interpret these people as persons afflicted with schizophrenia or bipolar disease. We may encounter a character like King Saul in the Hebrew Bible and imagine a man that was drowning in depression and paranoia. But you see, we cannot fully diagnose from such a distance, but we can in this day see these people and their afflictions and give space to their suffering. We can consider how Christ responds to their situations and try to do likewise. We can pull these stories out of the shadows and use them for our purposes to help us talk about mental illness and mental health. Now let's begin with the man known as the Gerasene demoniac. The story we find in chapter 5 of Mark is one of 4 stories where Jesus heals persons who are described as having unclean spirits. And indeed, the Jewish purity laws of things clean and unclean are really at the center of the story. At the outset of this text, Jesus arrives on the other side of the Sea of Galilee in an area populated by Gentiles. And there he encounters a man who the text says lived among the tombs. This man spent his days and nights with the dead, thus making him unclean. Well, the townspeople feared this man and sought to have him restrained. Their community, much like our society today, wanted to remove people with mental illness from their sight and hide them away. And so they cast this man down into the tombs and tried to bind him up in shackles and chains, but they were no match for the unclean spirit. The text also says that the man was howling and bruising himself with stones, engaging in self-harm that is sometimes present in people with mental illness. But when he sees Jesus, he runs to him and appeals to him for healing. As Jesus so often did, he moved past the purity laws that would say this man is unclean and not to be dealt with. He is moved by compassion for his suffering, and he reaches out to ask, "What is your name?" The Spirit answers, "My name is Legion, for we are many." A legion is a Roman regiment of 6,000 soldiers representing the many afflictions within the man and suggesting to us the many different manifestations of mental illness that we may encounter in this world. Mental health challenges are indeed legion. Well, Jesus commands the spirits to come out of the man, and in a curious move, they inhabit a herd of swine that then run off a cliff and meet their demise. The unclean spirits are no more, and the man is restored. We learn that he is then clothed and cared for upon his healing. Jesus then gives him a directive to go to the Gentile towns in his area and declare how much the Lord has done for you and what mercy he has shown you. And the man does just that. Feeling the full liberation of his spirit, he proclaims what was done for him. And as the final line reads, everyone was amazed. Now, the Son of God no longer walks among us to carve out the causes of mental illness and offer us miraculous healing. But this story can be read as a sign of hope that healing is possible. But first, we have to talk about mental illness and mental health. Too long, the subject of mental illness was something that we wanted to hide away and bury down in the basement. Like the people of the Gerasenes, we wanted to keep it contained in the tombs, out of sight, out of mind.
Here, let's go in front.
And we kept people with the most severe forms of mental illness locked away in institutions where they could not trouble us. And for other forms of mental illness, like depression, anxiety, and addiction, we kept those secrets locked away in ourselves and our families, lest we dare speak of them and receive the shame that often accompany these diseases. But I hope and pray that this is changing as our society learns how to talk about mental illness and mental health. Courageous celebrities like the pop singer Selena Gomez, the tennis star Naomi Osaka, and the actor Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson have opened up about their diagnoses and their struggles and brought public attention to the issues of mental health. Within our community, individuals are finding the fortitude to talk about their struggles and disclose their diagnoses to others, that we might better understand and relate to peer persons who live with obsessive compulsive disorder or experience anxiety or deal with deep bouts of depression. As a society, we are becoming educated on the ways that mental illness presents within our world, and they are indeed legion. We are learning and gaining language to understand the many ways that brain disorders and trauma present themselves in people that we know and love. From bipolar disorder to manic depressive episodes, to different forms of addiction, to disorders related to food and body image. These are illnesses and diseases no different than diabetes or Crohn's disease, asthma, or arthritis. We are right to name them and claim them and seek the care that is available to those who suffer from these afflictions. And we know that the church has a role to play in this movement for mental health awareness, and we're going to hear more about that today from our friend, Reverend Gilbert. Mental health Sundays like the one we held last month at First Congregational Church of Evanston in May are important also. But beyond naming the issues, we can offer referrals and help people receive care. We, the church, can be an advocate for greater access to mental health services. And we can talk openly about our struggles and stand alongside our friends and family who live with mental health challenges. We should strive to be like Christ and reach out to those challenged by these maladies. We should be like the man from the Gerasenes and declare what God and good care can do to give light to life. This should be what we talk about when we talk about mental illness. Bring it up from the tombs, set it before the light and love of Christ, and let the healing begin. Take care and God bless. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so very much for that very golden nuggets of wisdom. And I'm sure everyone was able to gather and glean some information from you. Thank you so much. We will now move to our Healing the Church by Reverend Stephanie Perdew, who is our Transitional Associate Conference Minister. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. And Pastor Jason asked that I bring you really kind of an update on the state of the search and call process in the UCC and in the Illinois Conference, particularly thinking about the way that intersects with what pastors may be feeling right now, what churches are experiencing, people looking to make moves, or really just discerning whether to stay or go in their own ministerial context. So because I'm new to this position as of February, and because this is a new configuration on our conference staff, I'm going to share a brief PowerPoint with you and walk you through, first of all, just some of the things that now fit into the job description and the role that I'm occupying for this transitional period, so that you know the resources available to you, particularly if you are in the search and call process or contemplating entering that process. And then the last few slides will share some data that is available as best we can discern about some of the trends in clergy retirement, clergy leaving calls, clergy seeking new calls, and my hunch is that some of that does intersect with mental health, with the stresses of pastoring during pandemic, with spiritual weariness. And so we'll kind of close by talking about whether you're staying or going in your present call, how are some ways to care for yourself and how can we care for one another during this time? So let me attempt to share my screen. And please tell me if you can see it.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if I'm able to access my slideshow. Hold on. I'm going to try to get it set in that capacity. And then go back and share my screen. There we go. All right, so knowing that we're gathered together and we're going to look at some of the trends in clergy search and call. Oops. I can't seem to advance my slide. I am sorry. I should have. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is just show it to you this way, and it's not optimal, but you should be able to click through these. I think. Right, so in my role, I'm called the Transitional Associate Conference Minister, focusing on pastoral transitions, and I'll tell you about what that means. And I do have some pastoral care responsibility for the pastors and churches in the Fox Valley and Eastern associations, which is also a little bit different configuration of our ACM Illinois conference roles. So what do we mean when we talk about pastoral transitions? That's a broad umbrella in the description of this role. And this role really is configured in a way that takes into account that there are several conferences in the United Church of Christ trying to consolidate the search and call function under one conference staff member in a way that can bring some efficiencies and best practices to this flow of work. So on the pastoral side, in working with clergy, either ordained or soon to be ordained, people who are mids, I work with pastors who are in discernment. Pastors will sometimes call me and say, you know, I'm thinking about making a move. I'm thinking about updating my profile. I really would love to talk about that. And I strive to be a safe and confidential place where we can have some of those conversations and begin some of that discernment work, knowing that often we need to be doing that work with our own spiritual director or our COP or friends, colleagues, even with a therapist in some cases. And I am available if you are updating your profile, if you're learning to use the new profile platform. Not so much to help with technical glitches. That is Daryl Ludwig's job in Cleveland, and I can point you to him, but to help you think about how to best position your profile, what you need to capture, what you want to share, how you want to share it. I can dedicate a bit of my time each month to reviewing people's profiles, and I'm glad to do so. And then when your profile goes up for validation, anyone on our ACM staff can validate it, but most often I'm the person attending to that, and then putting your profile in circulation as you request it to be, which means we do not in the Illinois Conference right now have a practice of blindly circulating profiles to churches without a pastor's direction or consent. We circulate profiles in places that you direct us to do so based on your own discernment. That's not to say that I'm not aware of things that are open or maybe coming open, and that if I know you're in discernment, I can make some suggestions or bring some of those things to your attention so that you might want to contemplate them. And I work with my peers across the country to circulate profiles from conference to conference when requested. MIDs can circulate a profile when approved pending call. And so I can also work with you if you are a MID and if that is your status on constructing and circulating your profile. We do have a number of departing and retiring pastors. And when a pastor takes leave of a ministerial call, there are some ethical boundaries around leave taking to be observed. And when pastors retire, the same thing goes. We have a wonderful national document called Assure Foundation, which guides us through those kind of checklists of what we need to do when we depart a congregation or a call, and also how we need to conduct ourselves relative to the interim who will come after us or the clergy who will succeed us. I have some crossover with my colleague, Reverend Kathy Laws, who now has the portfolio for what we call authorization and standing. So Reverend Laws works with transfers of standing from association to association. She works with MIDs. We have some best practices suggested for exit interviews if you're leaving a congregation. And then on Sundays, I'm often out in churches leading what we call liturgies of release or farewell. Just was with Pastor Jason at Ravenswood a few months ago before his departure to go to Evanston. Liturgies of installation. We're starting to see some installations because things were kind of on hold during pandemic, but now we're seeing movement and transition of calls. On the congregational side, I work with the search teams that may be seeking interim or settled ministry, orienting them, walking alongside them, advising on their local church profile, which, as you know, is their kind of advertisement of their pastoral position, posting those to our ministry opportunities page, communicating with our ecumenical partners when we have people being called or seeking calls in our partner denominations. And we do have certain situations across the Illinois Conference emerging where churches are entering into agreements or at least exploring them regarding sharing ministry, sharing a pastor, not necessarily merging, but having a pastor serve two churches in geographical proximity that perhaps are no longer at the point where they can support a full-time ministry, but can enter into a parish sharing, which can be as simple as sharing a pastor or as vibrant as also sharing ministries, mission, confirmation, different programs for all ages. In some situations, churches do want to evacuate one property and actually enter into a merger. And then we also know that there are churches that are discerning in this season whether they can continue and are concluding that they cannot. And so all of us on the conference staff work at some level with churches that have contemplated closure, who have made that decision to enter into what we call the legacy process in the United Church of Christ. And for churches, that's obviously a very painful decision. It can also be a very faithful decision. And when those decisions are underway, we attempt to work with those churches to make it as faithful as possible and to bring good celebration to those eras of ministry and to bring good closure to those situations. I don't know that we need to go into that. I'm more interested in telling you this because this is where we start to intersect a little bit with the state of the church and the state of all of our health. It's fair to say, and this was before I came into this role, but I think it was true, that, from March 2020 until just about recently, churches that were in transition stayed in transition. I know we have some people on the call who've been serving in interim or designated situations that have maybe been there a while because there was no way to move the search process along during the time when no one was going to make a move, when we couldn't go out and about, etc. But that is starting to change. And we have seen in the Illinois Conference about 20% of our churches in some form of search at the moment, either searching for an interim pastor, searching in very rare cases for a designated pastor, or searching for their settled pastor. And that means that we have the most open searches behind Southern New England, which is a conference that is large. Iowa and Wisconsin have more openings, but we're right up there. And those openings span the geography of our conference from the lake to Iowa, from essentially Springfield to the Wisconsin border. 2 of those searches are for full-time associates. A few are for what we call multiple staff, head of staff roles. Most of those searches are for solo pastor, but all of them I think are interesting, and they're all listed right now on our opportunities listing page on the website. We have other situations where churches are preparing for search, where they know a clergy person is leaving, or where they're currently working with an interim and preparing their local church profile and preparing to search. We have churches considering shared ministries, as I said, mergers and absorptions, and we have churches closing. I haven't been in this role long enough to tell you whether 20% of our churches being in search is a high number, but I suspect that it is relative to pre-pandemic. In the national UCC, and this is some information I've gleaned fairly anecdotally from Elizabeth Dilley, who is our national team leader for what we call MESA, Ministry Excellence Support and Authorization Office. And that office, working out of our national headquarters in Cleveland, supports those of us who are ACMs in working with search and call, supports those who are seeking chaplaincy credentialing, supports committees on ministry regarding best practices, fitness review, situational support, supports us in a lot of different ways, maintains our engaged profile platform. And Reverend Dilley's observation right now nationwide is that there are more openings in churches than there are pastors who are in search, or at least the alignment of where the openings are and what type of openings they are does not necessarily align with where the pastors are geographically, with where the pastors are willing to move geographically, or to take calls. And that sometimes has to do with salary. Often it has to do with family circumstance. If you are partnered and taking a new call means not just a move for you, but for others in your household who also may be working and have their own career, then that becomes a complex negotiation. And so I think it is true that the churches that are in search are not seeing the volume of profiles being received for their search from interested pastors that they used to. That makes them anxious. They sometimes wish there were more profiles. They also realize that when they're in search, or we're trying to help them realize that when they're in search, they need to move fairly quickly, because more likely than not, pastors who are searching will get multiple interviews at the same time and may even have multiple opportunities emerge. And so I will be honest that it's kind of a pastor's market if you are thinking about being in search. We do not yet have national UCC data that is really accurate on retirements that happened during the COVID era, or resignations, just people really leaving ministry to go do something else. I think we'll have that forthcoming in the next year. But there is other national reporting. The New York Times has reported this, Christian Century, other outlets that indicate that some pastors are retiring early or have retired early due to the stresses of ministering during COVID. And that clergy are leaving ministry due to what we would call burnout. So one of the best places for data about that is the Barna Group, which is a research center centered in California that tries to study trends, particularly among Protestant clergy, both what we would call evangelical and mainline identified. And it issued a 2017 study called The State of Pastors, where their sample size was 900 Protestant clergy. And it studied pastoral health, and they defined pastoral health as spiritual, financial, physical, vocational, and emotional. And already in 2017, their reporting was that the state of pastoral health was not great overall. And we know there are many reasons for that. The kind of evolution in the perception of the pastoral office in an increasingly secular world, the economic strain on pastors who incur sometimes high degrees of debt, advanced degrees, and then, don't really work for the kind of compensation that would be commensurate in other fields where you had to hold those degrees. What can become a kind of all-consuming 24/7 work cycle if you're not careful. Family stress, if you're in ministry, you can imagine what those factors are. By January 2021, the Barna Group went back and re-polled those pastors from its sample to ask about how they were feeling a year into pandemic. 29% of those pastors reported that they had thought about quitting. Just 10 months later, that was up 10 percentage points to 39% of pastors thinking about quitting, including a higher degree of pastors under 45 years old, perhaps looking at the long-term landscape and thinking this maybe just isn't viable for me economically or emotionally. More female identified pastors thinking about quitting. 51% of mainline pastors in that study compared to non-mainline clergy. So that, I think, does indicate to us what we already know, which is that it has been a hard few years for clergy. That national trends regarding church membership, declining church growth, already in play before pandemic, have accelerated. That churches that were vulnerable in terms of their vitality or financial stability prior to COVID probably are emerging even more vulnerable. We certainly are working with more churches that are discerning whether they're in a legacy situation. And as I talk to pastors in discernment, it's often not clear to me if they're really ready for a new call, or they're just so tired in their present setting that they need a break, that they need vacation, that they may need a medical mental health leave. So I think where the search and call process intersects with the clergy mental health question is complex. And what I think I'm trying to say is sometimes it may be clear that your call is coming to an end and that God is really at work in that. And sometimes you've just had it. And those are not necessarily the same thing, although sometimes they are the same thing. So what do we do? What do we do for ourselves? How do we support one another? How do we discern? Am I searching for a new call, or is there a renewed call that God is placing on me in this place? And maybe what I need is rest or Sabbath or some health care. So, be gentle with yourself. This is a very hard time to be in ministry. I think, and congregants are anxious, and we all see that. And it's hard for them to be gentle with us, and it can then be hard for us to be gentle with them in return. So a prayer for gentleness and a prayer for recognizing that a new call may not change situations dramatically. It may, but if you are struggling with an underlying depression or a spiritual just flatness, that may follow. As Pastor Jason was saying, the people in biblical times did not necessarily have the clinical mental health, knowledge that we do today. Our ancestors, the desert mothers and fathers, the early kind of wisdom teachers in the early centuries of the church, did have a lot of spiritual wisdom, however. And one of the things they would say is, if you came to the desert thinking that was going to relieve you of what you were carrying, that stuff just came with you. You carried it from one place to another. And so I think my word of caution is, if there's a depression or there's something underlying that needs to be addressed on a mental health level, that may be situational. It may be related to a call you're presently in, but it may be larger. It's a hard time to be in the world with war and inflation and the aftermath of George Floyd and just the insurrection hearing on TV, that we may carry that with us into a new ministry setting and not realize that what is going on might be becoming more chronic and not as situational. So that being said, calls do come to an end. And how do we discern that our call is coming to an end? One of the things Reverend Murph said to me as I was discerning that question about a year ago was, what are you hearing from God? What are you hearing from God in your prayer time? And that's a question to explore in your own prayer life, in work with a spiritual director. Maybe you have a clergy coach. I think it's important for all of us to have a therapist. Our UCC healthcare plan, if you do have that, provides some good benefits in that direction. And therapy may not be a crisis situation. It can be an ongoing cultivation of our mental health to be working with a therapist when we're in ministry. Take these concerns to your COP. I know there's an active COP and CMA. And some of those discernment questions you can bring to your ACM. We are not obviously a therapist. I am a spiritual director, but I can't be a spiritual director to everyone in the conference. But attend to that discernment, knowing that there are some trends. There are fewer full-time associate pastor positions, certainly, than there were 20 years ago, 25 years ago when I entered ministry, 26 years ago when I entered ministry. There are fewer churches with large multiple staff. And so there are fewer head of staff, large church positions. There are inevitably going to be more part-time positions or more situations, as I described, where a pastor might be responsible for two churches in a neighborhood or a contingent concurrent rural area. There are going to be more transitional positions. I can say very clearly to you that the Illinois Conference UCC has a shortage of trained interim ministers. We have a number of interim ministers who have retired. We need interim ministers. If you think God is putting it on your heart to explore what it would mean to be an interim or transitional minister, I'm glad to talk to you. We are just now exploring a program being offered by the Regional Disciples of Christ, which is an online, reasonably cost interim ministry training that follows the protocols of the interim ministry network, which is really the gold standard, but might make interim training much more accessible to a wider array of folks. So you'll be hearing more about that from us in coming weeks. And I want us all to trust, and I do believe, and I talked to Reverend Carlson a lot about this, and I heed her wisdom about this, that if Jesus is resurrected, and I believe he is, then his church cannot die. But what his church will look like, and what his church should look like, frankly, as we start to peel certain parts of the American church apart from American nationalism, or apart from capitalism, or apart from a kind of consumer-oriented approach to ministry, what that's going to look like will be very different than what we may have grown up with. And there's grief in that. And that adds to our mental health challenges, I think, as church people, laity, or clergy. But I do believe that God is not done with God's church, and God is not done needing ministers, whether lay or ordained. God is not done needing disciples. So I hope that this was helpful to you in understanding what the landscape really looks like at the moment from my point of view. And I want to assure you that if you are in search and call, if you're amid wanting to get your profile circulated, if you are thinking of updating your profile, or you just want to kind of see what's out there, even nationwide, I can be a resource for that to you. So I will end that. I hope I'm relatively on time. And Pastor Jason, maybe you can tell me if there's any time for Q&A.
If there are any questions, thank you so very much, Stephanie, Reverend Stephanie. If there are any questions, if you would be so kind to put those questions in the chat, and we will make sure that those questions are answered so that we might try to stay on schedule. Thank you so very much for that wonderful presentation.
I'm putting my Illinois conference email here in the chat. So if you want to follow up with me, I know we want to stay on schedule. You can do that with me personally.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good.
Now we will move on to Healing the People with Reverend Jon Gilbert Martinez. Gil, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Can I share my screen?
Buenos días.
Gil, I received a note from someone asking if you have a PowerPoint presentation, to make the screen large enough so everyone can see the word, the writing.
Yeah, I wasn't able
Gilbert,
to
I
share my
have just
screen.
given you co-host.
Thank you.
Second.
Thanks.
All right.
Okay, everybody should be able to see the screen. Good morning, everybody. So I will tie into Reverend Stephanie's presentation and what Reverend Jason has spoken to you about as well this morning, which is mental health. And my role, it would be mental health and the congregant. As you heard Reverend Regina mention, I'm Reverend Gilbert. I'm the pastor at Christ Church, UCC in DesPlaines. I'm also the communications consultant for the Colectivo, the UCC Latinx ministry, and outgoing vice moderator for the CMA. I'm also on the Mission and Spiritual Care Committee of the Advocate of Rural Health. I'm a former board member and vice chair for the UCC Mental Health Network. And I'm a new board member on the Scooper Ministry, which is a partnership between the Illinois Conference and Disciples of Christ. And I hold certification in mental health first aid and companionship pathways to promise. So right off the back, what is mental health? I think by now and this morning, you kind of have an idea of what mental health is. And we've also been talking about it for years now. Mental health is a positive concept It encompasses our emotions, our psychic, and our social interactions. More than a state of mind, having good mental health is more than the absence of illness. Rather, it's a state of holistic well-being. We live in a society, give me a moment, in which loneliness has become one of the most painful human wounds. And that is a little too real, especially with the recent massive gun violence. Uvalde school shooting that was 2 hours from where I grew up, that hit pretty close. I even have folks back home who were extremely anxious and afraid of that. And so aside from that, we know historically the church unfortunately has also inflicted a lot of pain and harm on so many. Mental health isn't about politics, but families, faith, and justice. Mental health does not discriminate. And as you heard Reverend Stephanie, it even affects your pastors because we are human just like everybody else. So mental health affects everyone regardless of culture, race, ethnicity, gender, or sexual orientation. Now, while it does affect everybody, the resources that people have will differ depending on their culture, their race, ethnicity, gender, and sexual orientation. 1 in 5 adults in America experience mental illness. Now, mental illness does not necessarily mean that they have a lifelong mental illness. This could also be a temporary mental health obstacle. So if you have a congregation of 50, 10 people are more likely to have some sort of mental health obstacle. Nearly 1 in 25 adults in America live with a serious mental illness. 1/2 of all chronic mental illness begins by the age of 14, 3/4 by the age of 24. Who lives with the mental illness? Almost 14% of Asian adults, 16 Hispanic Latinx adults, almost 19 of Black adults, 19 of white adults, and 28 of Indigenous adults. LGBTQ community, being that we're in Pride Month, LGBTQ community persons are twice or more times likely to have mental conditions compared to heterosexual individuals. And why is that? Well, because there's a lot of pain and infliction that goes into being a member of the LGBTQ community by society and by the church. So when you're constantly told that you're not worthy and you're not loved and that you're living in sin, that impacts a person. 11% of transgender people are likely to deny care for mental health due to discrimination and biases. Think of what's happening right now in Texas and Florida. Texas governor has dictated that families of transgender children are to be investigated for child abuse, even though they're in loving homes. And we know that transgender people have to go through counseling before they're allowed to start all their treatment, just to make sure that they are on the same page and they're being taken well care of. Youth are 2 to 3 times more likely to attempt to die by suicide than their heterosexual counterparts. There was an instance in Texas, once again, where a transgender person did attempt to die by suicide recently because of Greg Abbott. Impact on communities of color. There's less access to treatment, less likely to receive treatment, poor quality of care, higher levels of stigma. The healthcare system culturally is insensitive. If, for instance, if you were to do a search for Hispanic Latinx therapists, you'll find that there's a very, very small amount that are licensed professionals. Racism, bias, homophobia, and discrimination in treatment. If you talk to someone who is non-binary or transgender, or even someone who's lesbian or gay, you will hear that a lot of times, even when they're trying to seek health care treatment, they're discriminated, or they're mislabeled, or they use the wrong pronouns, language barriers. Anyone who does not speak English will encounter that. And there's a lot of people who don't have health care because it is so expensive, including some of our clergy colleagues, because they do not get paid enough. And how can they provide for themselves, right? We heard about potential burnout and mental health crisis within clergy. Well, that's also why it's important to support clergy. A compassionate and caring leader can help others with their mental health. Now, I left that kind of general leader. Lay leaders are leaders of the church. It is not just your pastor. If you're a lay leader in your congregation, you too can do something to help with the stigma that's on mental health. Open dialogue, utilize the pulpit. So you encourage your pastor, hey, pastor, we really want you to open this dialogue about mental health. Don't constrict what they talk about, because we know sometimes there's that temptation from congregations who want to restrict what the pulpit is saying. Provide resources, host workshops and trainings. Now, since I started my congregation, I started as designated term pastor. And that was one of the first things I opened up was open dialogue on mental health, because that is an important part of my life, because I live with some mental illness. And I recognized that as a teenager in high school. I would get constant nosebleeds almost on a daily basis, went through all these examinations. Nothing was determined to be physically, medically wrong until I was asked, is there anything else? And that something else was that I knew I was not heterosexual. And I was raised Roman Catholic. So you can imagine what that does, along with my culture, which is Chicano and deep South Texas. So when you get all that mixed, it was a lot of stress on me, right? I was already getting bullied for something that I didn't even recognize. So I developed that sense, but it took me years to actually accept that, because culturally there's oh, it's just in your head. Yes, that is the problem. It is in my head, but I didn't have the resources to deal with it. So what can you do? Workshops. I put these up. Our church, for instance, along with some other ones in our conference, are hosting mental health first aid training. If you're not familiar with mental health first aid training, we can equate that to CPR, right? CPR, why is it handy to have? Well, if there's an emergency, someone's choking, someone collapsed, you have the resources to be able to step in, at least until the trained medical people can get there to provide that. Mental health first aid training is similar to that, but for mental health. If someone is in crisis, you will assess the situation, right? Obviously, if you're in danger of being harmed, that's going to be discouraged, or someone else. But if there's no, harm potential to yourself, you step in, you try to be with that person until a medical mental health professional is able to assist that person. Companionship training, that's kind of like, I like to describe it as mental health first aid light. It's a shorter training and it just gives you basics so that you can at least try to be with that person during that stressful journey. Other things that you can do as a congregation, and this is not just for your pastor to do, this is for the lay leaders to take the initiative and maybe becoming a wise congregation for mental health. And that means that you're becoming welcoming, inclusive, supportive, and engaged in mental health. And that you can begin with the UCC Mental Health Network. You contact them, fill out a form online. I would know because I created the form before I resigned from the Mental Health Network. And then one of the current board members will reach out to you and begin to have a conversation with you. What have you done? Where are you at on your journey? My congregation currently is discerning both the open and affirming process and wise process right now. So hence why we're hosting a little bit more on mental health awareness as well. Other things you can do is have a book study. My congregation has a book club. I know that other congregations does. I know First Congregation in Evanston also has book studies. This is a great opportunity for you to have book studies. We have two clergy members in the UCC, Reverend Rachel and Reverend Sarah, who have put out books. One of my favorites is The Life-Saving Church, because not only does it address how we, the church, can try to do better by those living with mental illness, it also talks about some of the errors that congregations make sometimes when we're dealing with mental health first aid training. And you notice the one in the middle, I put The Princess and the Frog, a little bit different from Princess and the Frog. This one deals with literally a princess that is a child, that is being taught how to cope with her mental illness. Because oftentimes children are not taught how to deal with their mental illness. It's solely rely where the parent will take care of everything. But the parent cannot be there 24/7. So you try to help the child kind of develop some of those tools, because we know that chances are they're going to live with this mental illness for the rest of their life. So the sooner we give them the tools and resources, the better it will be for that child. Principal Christians should practice.
Actually.
And these are some of the Unitarian principles: inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are all a part. There's often times where congregants will not talk to each other because of the fear that they might seem as crazy. They have fear of like, oh, they don't have it all together. And so that does not create a welcoming environment. That does not solidify their worth and the dignity, because we know that there's still stigma on mental health. And so when we open that dialogue and we share our stories, it allows for that conversation to begin somewhere, because we have to do a better job. When do I seek professional help? Well, you're going to have to deal with that for a process, right? You recognize, oh, maybe there's a mental illness I'm living with. And not until you're comfortable say, okay, I'm ready to seek help, right? It's kind of like someone who's living with diabetes. You're starting to see the symptoms and you're like, something's off, right? And I feel like this when I have too much sugar and what have you. You finally go to the doctor because you're like, I need to know what's going on. And then the doctor tells you, yes, you're pre-diabetic or you're diabetic, and these are the tools that you're going to need. Same thing with mental health. Reverend Stephanie mentioned on how everybody should have a therapist. My therapy time is sacred. That is Gilbert's time. That is Gilbert's time to just take care of my mental health. And I don't miss my therapy time, because that's helpful. Doesn't mean you're crazy. It just means that you need someone to help you sort out some of those things that, get into your mind and sometimes weigh heavy. Have you felt any of these? These are important. Eating or sleeping too little or too much. Now, this is aside from, especially clergy, working too many hours. We know that we have to distinguish. Are we eating too little or too much, right? Most of the time is clergy, you're eating too little, eating not enough sleep, because you get so busy some seasons like Christmas and Lent. That's aside from that. Having low energy. Even if you're getting your sleep, you're eating correctly, you have lower energy, that's a sign that you need to pay attention to. Feeling unusually confused, on edge, or scared, and anxious. Hearing voices or believing things that are untrue, those are other possible symptoms. And inability to perform your daily tasks. Something you used to enjoy or you could do without any trouble, and now all of a sudden it's becoming a little harder for you to navigate. Those are signs that you need to seek mental health with a therapist. Now, don't hesitate to seek professional help. Psychology Today, you go in there and it gives you an array of options to try to find a therapist. Ask you male, female, it asks you the gender, it asks you the specialty, even insurance plan, no insurance plan, if they have a scale on how they can help you, all those sorts of things. That is what I usually use to refer people who are like, I'm ready to see a therapist, and I give them that website. I've done it with my own family because I even help them because they're my family. So I'll sit with them. I'm like, okay, what are you looking for? Who do you want to see? I always advise people, because this is already difficult enough, that you seek a therapist who is somewhat of a reflection of you. Of course, sometimes culturally, it'll be a little hard, or ethnicity, because there's a shortage, but you try to look at other aspects of the therapist. Are they LGBT friendly? Are they an ally? Are they part of the LGBT community? Does that, work with you? Are they a pastor? One of my first therapists in this area was a licensed therapist, but also an ordained clergy member. And for me, that helped me because they understood where I was coming from the secular and from the ministerial aspect. And so that helped me. Self-care is important. I know Reverend Molly is very big on her self-care, and we who work with her quite a bit know how important this is to her. And I know a lot of my other colleagues as well. This is important. It is not selfish. Just like you take care of your diabetes, just like you take care of your high blood pressure, mental health is no different. Take a break from the news. We know during this pandemic, it's been so overwhelming. I had congregants with the recent shootings that it's like, I get so emotional and I start crying and I just don't know how to feel anymore. It's okay to not watch the news. I do it myself. Yes, I'll read it because I have more control on what I'm reading, but with the news, it's sometimes a little too graphic and that just gets me anxious. So I switch it off. Meditate, eat well balanced meals. Don't forget to breathe. I tell this to people often. Breathe. That's the least that we can do sometimes, right? It's just breathe, because we get so anxious, we get so overwhelmed with work and everyday life, family, everything. If you're a lay leader and you work and you're really involved in your church and you have your family, that's similar to what some of the pastors do. We have family as well. We have the church. We have to balance that. Exercise. Aside from staying safe, ensure that you are taking steps to keep yourself healthy. If you are supposed to take medication for whatever reasons, take your medication. If you're supposed to watch your sugar, watch your sugar. If you know that you have high blood pressure, watch that stress level. Make time to unwind. We know, or at least I know, since I have Reverend Molly on social media, she unwind quite a bit for the last few days, which was awesome. And I loved all the pictures, right? Why? She needed that time. And it's a celebration of her anniversary with her husband. So that means she's also nurturing that relationship. And that's part of her support system. And that's what, and so I'm sorry, Molly, I'm picking on you this morning. We need to support those relationships. We need to nurture them, right? Just like you take care of your garden outside, those of you who have gardens, why do you do it? You want them to look beautiful. You want your plants to grow healthy. Same thing with our relationships. That also means that if you're a pastor, you do have, and we know because we've been trained repeatedly on our boundaries. If there's something you can tell your congregant, hey, no, that's where it stops. If you're a lay leader and you see that boundaries are being crossed, you can also put that into place. So connect with others. That is very important. You do not want to isolate yourself. Talk to others. If you trust someone, start talking to them. Allow them to help you, be part of your support system. Take care of your household's emotional health. If you have children, talk to them. How are they feeling? How are you feeling? I know that my sister, with the recent shootings, it just reminded her, my nieces are both in high school. There's that anxiety of sending your kids to school, making sure that they're supposed to go and learn and come home safely, right? But that messes with you. Well-being resources. Now, we are blessed to live in a conference that has so many resources. And this Center for Faith and Community Health Transformation is part of Advocate Aurora's network. And Amy McNicholas is a faith and mental health specialist. She is the one actually doing our mental health first aid training and companionship training. She does, among other things, she also has therapy sessions, group sessions that she can do. She is a great resource for us as clergy to have and to connect with. She is an amazing individual. Support hotlines. Start sharing these with your congregants or lay leaders. Have these handy if someone does come up to you and says, I need help. You have these helplines available to you. I posted on our newsletter now. I have a hotline on there for mental health because that's really important, especially right now with us navigating COVID. National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's one of the most popular ones. You also have other national hotlines. And we also have where you can find other treatment. So findtreatment.gov will give you a whole bunch of resources. If you're battling addictions, this is one as well that will help you find resources for that. I've had a couple of people who were not congregants who called the church asking for resources on working with their addictions. And I found the resources for them and gave them some options. Behavioral Treatment Centers Services Locator. That's another resource. Now, what I like is our new emergency number that it's supposed to be initiated next month, 988. I recommend you all jot it down because this will be the equivalent of 911, but for mental health emergencies. This is going to do such a big thing for us as a community, as a society, because this will help us have more direct connection to those resources that we need. And that is it. So let me stop sharing. There you go.
Thank you so much, Reverend Gilbert.
You're welcome.
I am going to ask that you just let the Holy Spirit do what it's doing. I see a lot of questions coming through the chat, and I don't think that it will be wise to move forward with the rest of the meeting without allowing you as members of this association not to be able to ask questions. And so we want to stay by schedule, we know, but sometimes the Holy Spirit dictates otherwise. And so if you are okay with us just kind of breaking that, please, okay, so I see some thumbs up. I sent Reverend Stephanie in the chat if she would be okay to answer questions. And I think I spoke with Gil before he went on with his presentation, and he said he would be. So if you're okay with us just doing that, I would be so grateful, because I think you have questions that need to be asked. And if you have the question, somebody else might benefit from your question. And then if you need to go to take a personal break, please do so. We will get back on schedule at some point as the Holy Spirit allows. So please, if you have questions, please ask your questions at this time. Thank you. Thank you so much. You may unmute yourself and ask your questions. Feel free to ask your questions. I saw a lot of questions in the chat.
This is Dr. Howe. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Dr.
Okay.
Howe.
Is it possible to get a copy of your handout, your presentation? It would be helpful since it was difficult taking notes, and it really is good information that you were sharing.
Yeah, I can definitely give you that. It's actually online, so it'll be easy for me to share the link to you.
Okay.
And I'll
Thank
put it
you.
in the chat in just a minute.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Stephanie, I'm not sure how much of your presentation that you can share. Can you share any of that with everyone?
Sure. I'll figure out how best to do that. It's a PowerPoint file. So there's not an online link, but I can share that document to you or Pastor Jason or Sarah Lorbach from our office could email it out to all the people who were registered.
That would be great. That would be great. And Gil, Reverend Gil, if you could do that, give it to Sarah. She could send it to all the registrants. Thank you, Reverend Stephanie, for those items that you can share, Reverend Stephanie. Thank you. Any other questions? I see a hand from Anthony Williams.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
In 2019 at the assembly in Milwaukee, we passed a resolution entitled Nehemiah's Life, calling for Congress to host hearings, congressional hearings on violence, civilian violence as a public health crisis, a public mental health crisis. That resolution still sits, I believe, somewhere, perhaps at the national office, collecting dust. The covenant of that resolution was to address what we're talking about right now. And because of that resolution, we were able to pass House Bill 158 in the state of Illinois, and we're still dealing with this, that violence is a public health crisis. It's all connected. It's structural. And so I hope and pray that you all hear me and that we talk about this Nehemiah's Life resolution that could be very effective in not only helping the church, but helping our nation. It is all connected. So I just wanted to just put that out there.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions? We want to make sure that everyone gets their questions out there. There's been some wonderful information that has been shared this morning, and a lot of information that's helpful for MIDs and for those discerning in that discerning process right at the point of ordination or just have been recently ordained. So it's been some awesome information, and the information that was shared by Reverend Gill is very helpful for all of us because we need to learn how to take care of ourselves so we can take care of others. Okay, I see a hand from Gail and then a hand from Benna. Gail, can you unmute yourself, please? You're still muted, Gail.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are.
Okay, good. I wanted to ask about resources for mental health for children. What kind of, if someone would talk a little bit about that.
In what particular, in like what particular area?
Resources for children?
Yes, mental health resources for children.
So I don't have any particular ones just geared for kids on hand, but you can actually connect with Amy McNicholas with Advocate Aurora, and the link that I share with my presentation, her information is in that presentation, and she's also on the Advocate Aurora website. She would probably be one that can help you find local resources for that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Reverend Gilbert, that was the question I put into chat. This has been a bell. I not only asked about resources for children, but also for the parents of children who are experiencing mental health concerns. And I did not know if you would talk about potential hospitalizations or medications or therapies for children and for their parents.
Yeah, unfortunately, because of the amount of time frame that we were allowed it for today, I just kind of gave a generalized one. But honestly, that would take a little bit more research to get more particular resources for that. But again, I think that Amy McNicholas would be a good resource for that. And I know that we also have some clergy and some lay leaders in our congregations who do work with children, that if any of them are present, feel free to type in some resources into our chat.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I'd echo what Reverend Gilbert said about Advocate Aurora, particularly on the north side, Lutheran General and Park Ridge. Carol Stevens is a UCC pastor. Tracy Nolan is a UCC pastor. They are on staff in the children's unit, and they have a dedicated inpatient and outpatient children's mental health program. And at least on the north side are very effective in working with families and referring families, whether children need hospitalization or need support and can stay in the home. So pointing back in that direction and the links in Reverend Martinez PowerPoint.
Thank you. I see questions from Nancy and Matt. Nancy?
Okay, as a retired pediatrician, there are not nearly enough resources for children as they are being developed, but I would like to point out that pediatricians are a wonderful source of connecting to resources, even though there are not enough. Most pediatricians will make a phone call for emergent situations to try and connect a child and family to a resource. So don't forget about us.
Thank you, Nancy. Matt?
So yesterday, can you hear me? Yesterday,
Yes.
driving home, I heard on the news that the governor of Illinois signed some legislation this week about more mental health resources. I'm not sure what that is, if anyone knows, but very excited to have more support and money and resources funneled to this topic.
Thank you. Is there another question? Anthony, do you have another question? Or statement?
Yes, may I please?
Certainly.
Let me share with you all from personal experience. All of this, from my research and dealing with the epidemiologists and dealing with the mental health community, is related to one thing. And the fact that violence is a public health crisis, a public mental health crisis, because of the Illinois Conference, Bill McCarthy, Cluster 4, we not only got the Nehemiah Life Resolution passed, but House Bill 158. Please look it up. The Illinois Health Reform Bill, estimated at $38 billion, which grassroots citizens and diligent leaders in the United Church Christ Illinois Conference got passed. Please don't go to sleep on House Bill 158, the Illinois Health Reform Bill. You can find some major resources in that. All the governor is doing is expending money from that particular bill into other resources, which he should. But we cannot be silent on this issue anymore because it's all related. Current traumatic stress occurs before post-traumatic stress. But what about anticipated traumatic stress? That's how we're living right now. So we have a challenge right now, but we can take some legislative action by way of the church, which we've done with Nehemiah's Life Resolution, and continue with the state and federal government. So I just want to put that out there to you all because we've been diligently working on that, and I just want to share that with you this morning. Thank you so much for allowing me to give comments.
Thank you. Reverend Anthony, Reverend Molly, and then Dr. Shirley.
Thank you. I want to emphasize the role that the church can play in supporting mental health in particular, especially our LGBTQ children. I'm sorry, I'm host, so I'm also muting. Especially for our LGBTQ children. Gilbert shared how one of the major factors for the increased rate in mental health concerns and suicidality in our LGBTQ youth and how high those rates are, it correlates directly with their feelings of acceptance, inclusion, and affirmation of their whole self and identity. And we have a unique voice in emphasizing that they are beloved children of God, made in God's image exactly as they are. And there's an important role that we can play in supporting the mental health of our youth and children.
Thank you so much. Dr. Fleming?
Hi, thank you. I wanted to sort of ditto what Dr. Nancy said, but also add that the school nurse is a resource for helping connect youth, particularly because there are not enough services for young people. So that's important. It also is an important point for us to begin and gather with folks around advocacy for more resources. That will take time. So in the interim, buffering, sort of the companionship, and there is a mental health first aid version that is for youth, for dealing with youth and identifying. So those two pieces are therefore available for churches and congregants to learn what we can do, how we can identify, and how we can accompany people until they can get to the resources that they need. Also within our area, there is a trauma hotline that people can call. And I don't exactly know that number, but I can look it up and share it out with folks. And they will do, particularly for those people who have been exposed to trauma, they will do at least 4 sessions. And those people have been trained and prepared to provide support and care. That's it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, I will allow, if you would like, Reverend Stephanie, if you have anything else that you wish to share. Okay, thank you. Gil, is there anything else that you wish to?
No, I would just echo everything everybody's commented, especially those who are in some what connection with mental health or know about resources, is just connect with as many possible people that have been mentioned that are resources for you. We have to start somewhere. And if you don't know where the resources are, you've heard different ones. You worry about your child. Yes, I will say that your pediatrician is one of those. My son's pediatrician is awesome. Whenever I have questions or anything, he's like, just let me know what you need. And he has all those resources. Doesn't have all the answers, but we'll find the resource. So, and there's a lot of good school counselors and nurses who will find that for you as well. So, anything like that. And if you have questions on what the process is for WISE, if you don't want to contact the Mental Health Network directly, feel free to email me and I can give you some responses and then connect you with the Mental Health Network.
Thank you. Let us applaud Dr. Reverend Stephanie and Reverend Gilbert for wonderful presentations. And now, as we have asked that you take your personal time if you need it, we will move on to our song by Joseph Luau. And then we will have a presentation, a stewardship moment by Larry McClure, Reverend Larry McClure. Thank you. Joseph, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Can't go back to the beginning. Can't control what tomorrow will bring. But I know here in the middle is the place where you promised to be. I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? As I walk now through the valley, let your love rise above every fear, like the sun shaping the shadow. In my weakness, your glory appears. I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? Holy Spirit, dry bones awaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Oh, not for a minute was I forsaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Come, Holy Spirit, dry bones awaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this Not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again?
Awesome, 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 awesome. Thank you so much, Joseph. Awesome. Now we will have our stewardship moment by Reverend Larry. Thank you again, Joseph.
Good morning, CMA Spring Meeting attendees. What does OCWM stand for? Ornery children worry mothers. Old cows won't milk. Our church wants money. Perhaps not. Let's try again. Our concerns work miracles. Our compassion warm the multitudes. Our community welcome many. That's more like it. OCWM really stands for our church's wider mission. It defines the important way local congregations work together for God's mission that indeed works miracles, warms the multitude, and welcomes the whole family of God. As the United Church of Christ congregations, we covenant with one another to work together in mission to do tasks that are bigger than a single congregation can accomplish alone. Local churches join together in associations, and associations band together as conferences. Conferences within the United States and associations throughout the world form the United Church of Christ. We band together as the Illinois Conference to expand our mission to include outdoor ministries, ecumenical connections, campus ministries, and many, many more programs. There are approximately 4,500 local congregations in the United Church of Christ, providing help and services that reach across our country and around the world. Local churches give their financial support through budgeting an annual pledge to OCWM and through their 4 special offerings, which are 1 great hour of sharing, strengthen the church, neighbors in need, and the Christmas fund. We provide spiritual support through prayer, human support through participating programs, serving on committees, calling forth those we need to become our future church leaders, and keeping our local church strong. What a joy to be a part of the United Church of Christ community of faith that links us with God's people around the earth. How much does our OCWM dollar stay in the Illinois Conference and its 5 associations, helping to serve Christ and do God's mission in the world? 80% stays right here in the Illinois Conference and its 5 associations, Chicago, Eastern, Fox Valley, Prairie Association, and Western, for service and call, church profiles, clergy profiles, mediation, preaching and teaching the word, church and ministry, student financial support, in-care, ordination, licensed ministry, commission ministry, privilege of call, standing for both clergy and churches, United Church of Christ history, installations, training, ministries and mission, Chicago, United, and Eden seminaries, international partnerships with Maya and Angola, mission partners, local evangelism and visioning and planning, relationships with other UCC agencies, Advocate Healthcare, Chicago Theological Seminary, Community Renewal Society, Elmhurst College, to name a few. 20% goes to the national setting of the United Church of Christ. These funds support ministry that reaches from local churches in our own Illinois Conference to people in need throughout the world. In the national setting of the United Church of Christ, there are 4 covenanted ministry partners who are supported by gifts from our OCWM that work together to change lives. The Office of General Ministries, Church Wider Ministries, Local Church Ministries, Justice and Witness Ministries. On behalf of the Illinois Conference staff and Conference Council, I extend to you a heartfelt thank you for the churches of CMA and for their generous giving to OCWM and participating in the other 4 offerings. If your church gives annually, I pray that you would consider giving quarterly. And if your church gives quarterly, I pray that you would consider giving monthly. OCWM gifts for the conference for 2021 amounted to $1,050,000. And there were 57 5-for-5 churches conference wide. Thank you again, and God bless and be safe.
Thank you so much, Larry. Thank you.
Welcome.
We will now move into our business portion of the meeting, which will be the election of officers. And this will be done by, obviously, the vote of the membership. Our nominations chair, our elections chair will be Roger Dart, who will now conduct the elections process. And what's noted and important to each and every one of us, those elected will take up their new roles or begin their new roles effective after the annual celebration, which takes place October 19th through the 21st. So please note that those elected will take their positions after the annual fall celebration. So with that, Roger, are you ready?
Thank you, Regina. First of all, let me thank personally all of the cluster deans and pastors of CMA who have played a role in finding candidates to fill positions. It has been a long and arduous process. We have a handful of people who have stepped forward to serve. I will begin by offering the name for the position of moderator in the person of Sarah Lynn Jones, who is a MID in CMA. For vice moderator, I nominate Reverend Brittany Kane Conley. And for the nominating committee, Mr. Chris Toft of Edgebrook Community Church, UCC. Those are the candidates that have come forward since the search began. I would offer them for election at this time.
We have, if you would state those names again, please, for the moderator.
For moderator, MID Sarah Lynn Jones.
Okay.
For vice, yes, for vice moderator, Brittany Kane Conley. And for the nominating committee, Chris Toft, T-O-F-T, of Edgebrook Community Church.
You have heard the nominations, Chair, noting that the nominations for the moderator for Sarah Lynn Jones, at this time, we can open the floor for nominations. However, we must understand that those serving must not be an ordained clergy.
Regina, Carol has hand raised.
Thank
Carol,
you. Yeah, I think Brittany Kane Conley is relocating. If anyone from her church can verify that.
okay. If anyone, Roger, did she say that she wanted to serve in this role? And did she indicate that she?
I have not talked to her in the last several days, so I will do so right now. I'll make an attempt.
If there are no other nominations, we might be able to move forward with the nomination for moderator. Are we ready for the vote? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Let's see, the screen keeps jumping. All those in favor, please keep your hands raised. Okay, lower your hands, please. Roger, did you get that vote? Were you able to vote?
I did not see it.
Okay, would you raise your hands again, please? I'm so sorry. We're gonna count. I'll help you, Roger. Jason, will you help as well? All those in favor of Sarah Lynn Jones serving as the moderator for 22 to 24.
I counted 43 in favor.
3.
Agree.
Lower your hands, please. Lower your all hands, please, Lord. All those who are opposed, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carries. Our moderator for 2022 to 2024 is Sarah Lynn Jones, and we congratulate you, Sarah. I will be in touch with you very soon. Let us do applause to Sarah. Thank you so very much. And as we have now some information on our moderator, vice moderator, is Brittany on the line? Is she with us today? That might be able to speak to that.
She's not in the meeting.
She's not in the meeting.
She's relocating for a PhD program. I think it was in Colorado.
Okay. So we now have information that she is relocating for a PhD program in Colorado. Terrell, is that the information that you received?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so all that being said, I'm sure that you all will agree that we will not submit her, Brittany's name for vice moderator. Are we all in agreement with that by general consent on that?
Yep.
Thank you. We now have the position of vice moderator open. Roger, would you proceed with nominations on that? If there's anyone from the floor, a candidate from
This will be a nomination from the floor.
Yes, it will be. Thank you.
I have a question.
And this would have to be, oh, I'm sorry. This would have to be a clergy, correct, Regina?
That's correct.
Clergy, yes. Because the moderator is non-clergy, so the vice will be clergy. We have any, do we have any nominations from the floor? Roger, Gil has his hand raised.
Gilbert.
Oh, no. I was saying thumbs up to you, Cindy.
Marilyn is saying she will do it.
Marilyn Pagan Banks.
Yay, yes.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you, Marilyn. Roger, would you proceed to see if
I
there's any?
believe that is the only other, the two positions of secretary and treasurer remain. They are continuing terms. And beyond that, I have no other candidates.
All those we need to address and properly vote the vice moderator in. If there are no other nominations, all those, are we ready for the vote? All those in favor for Marilyn Pagan Banks to serve as the vice moderator for 2022-2024, please raise your hands. Keep your hands raised, please, until we get the official count.
Wow. Three, 4, 5, 6.
I have 39.
39. Thank you. Would you lower your hands, please? Yeah, thank you. All those opposed, please signify by doing the same. Seeing none, thank you so much, Marilyn. Thank you so much. We have Marilyn Pagan Baines, who will serve as our vice moderator for 2022-2024. Thank you so very much. And now for our nominating committee, we have the name of Chris Toft, T-O-F-T.
A lay
Roger.
member, Edgebrook.
Pardon me?
He is a lay member of Edgebrook Community Church.
And he will serve as a chair.
That
Is
has
this the
not been
chair?
addressed the committee.
Okay, we have to have it. Are you remaining on the committee?
My term is concluding.
Term is concluded. Okay. All
I've
right.
had 2 terms.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, Wayne, I'm sorry, I'm not, Roger, can you watch so you can call the names? But Wayne, we have Wayne McPherson, and then we have Jason Coulter.
No, I had my hand raised by mistake.
Yep,
Sorry.
I was ready to vote in favor of Mr. Toft.
Okay, all right. Are there any nominations from the floor from nominating committee? The nominating committee will work together to determine the chair. Any other nominations for the nominating committee? We will have Chris Toft with remaining seats. How many remaining seats will we have to be filled for the nominating committee, Roger?
5 more.
5 more. We're asking that you're prayerful. We're asking that you ask members of your church, those who we know that want to work and serve for the CMA, to please be prayerful about this position. But we will move on with the nomination for Chris Toft. And although, are we ready for the vote? All those in favor for Chris Toft, please raise your hand to serve as our nominating committee from 2022 to 2024.
25, 27, 29, 30, 32, 33.
Yep, I have 33.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, lower your hands, please. Have a couple more hands that need to be lowered. Okay, one more hand to be lowered. May we have some help with Thank you. Though all those opposed, please do the same by raising your hand. Thank you. Chris Toft will serve on our nominating committee for 2022-2024. Thank you. Roger, you may proceed.
We have 18 remaining or 9 positions, 5 for nominating. I have 1, 2, 3. I need 5 more for church and ministry. We have 2 people who are concluding their terms immediately that need replacement. And then we have, so that would be the next, would be 5 positions for the nominating committee from the floor would be the next step.
Are there any other nominations? We are opening the floor for nominations for our nominating committee, and I said that earlier. We did not get anyone at this time. We're asking that you be very prayerful. The next positions that we have open will be church and ministry, and that number is being discussed Michael Jones is going to be in discussion with Kathy Laws and Molly Carlson. So we're not quite sure what that number will be as of yesterday. So we will determine what that number is going to be. And once we determine that number, then we will be able to, Roger, give you that accurate number. So we will know the number of spaces that need to be filled. Our secretary needs to leave for another meeting at 12. Is there anyone that might be able to take the minutes from this point forward? And Reverend Marietta, would you be so kind to do that? You take lovely minutes, and I thank you so much for all that you always volunteer to do. Thank you so very much. Thank you, David. Thank you, David.
Yeah, Reverend Marietta, I've been taking notes all along, so I'll send you mine.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you.
Okay, Marilyn needs to leave as well. Thank you so much. If you will allow us, may we be able to discuss the number of names for church and ministry, and then we will get that out. Would that be something, Molly, that we might be able to do, to table that position for now? Thank
Excuse
you.
me, I'd like to
Yes.
make a statement, please.
Yes.
According to our bylaws, the number is 27. You can't just change it right here.
We're not trying to change it right here.
Yeah, but you know, that's how many people we need. It's 27.
Right, but they're going to be in discussion. So we're keeping it at 27.
I'm just saying that this discussion can't be changed. You know, discussion can't change. We need 27.
Thank you.
The question is, how many open slots are there relative to the 27 total, if I'm not mistaken?
That's right.
Okay, thank you. Right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Juanita. We are on record. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Is there any other position? Roger, you said 18, that's 10.
Right, we have 3 openings on the Committee for Congregational Life. That needs 3 more. It has 3 vacancies.
Okay, and that's 13.
And then we have 1 position for the conference representative on mission support. We have a representative for the conference nominating committee. I'm sorry, mission support, we need 4 people. That's our complete representation from CMA.
Okay, 5 nominating, 5 church and ministry, 5 congregation.
Yeah, 4 for conference mission support. I have an opening for conference youth. I have an opening for the conference annual planning committee. And we have an opening for the Tut Hill Commission from CMA.
Okay, and the mission is the conference use, the conference annual planning meeting, and what else?
The Tut Hill Commission.
Okay, I have conference youth, conference annual planning, Tut Hill, and what else? That's 3.
The mission support committee of the conference.
And support, okay.
And we have 4 positions open on that.
4?
Yes.
Okay, and how had you planned to get this information out to everyone? So that they can see it, and we need like a little brief job description so everyone would know what they are placing their names in contingency for the position for.
The most effective way that I can put together is to assemble a slate that will be emailed to each church, and the churches will hold their votes and report those.
Okay, so the people of the CMA, so we need to make sure everyone understands and is on one accord with how we're going to proceed. Rudra, I see your hands. Give us just a second. We need to make sure that everyone's comfortable with what we're doing.
Right.
We need to make sure that, so would you please explain, you're going to send this
We'll
to,
assemble the slate as we put names into it, to each church for their vote. As then it'll take a meeting of the church or a circulation to get that vote assembled, and then submit that vote back to the association conference office for totaling. I don't know of any other mechanism available.
Molly, would you have any recommendations, or Terrell, would you have any recommendations? And then we will address Rudra and Marietta.
I think we're addressing two different issues. One is the process of how do we hold a vote, and the second is share information so that we can get so we can recruit qualified people to serve effectively in these roles.
That's been the biggest issue.
So Roger, we need to, for the position of nominating, for the position of church ministry, for the
Yep.
position of congregational life, for
Yes.
all those positions, we need to make sure that everyone in the CMA gets something, a little blurb that says what each person will be doing, so that they will be able to make the decisions, responsible decisions as to whether they want to serve, or if they want to discuss it with someone at their churches to
Correct.
serve in those positions.
One
And
of the
then-
examples, I'm sorry, excuse
No,
me.
go ahead, go ahead.
I was going to say that in the case of the nominating committee, the bylaws call for a representative from each cluster. And so that's how I approached it was. And at this point, we have a representative from cluster 2, but none of the others.
So we need to get someone on the nominating committee from the other clusters.
Mhm.
So we have 2. We need one from 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6 to
Correct.
serve on the nominating committee. So
Correct.
we know that that is done, but they still might need a little blurb to see exactly what the expectation is for them,
Yep.
so that they're
Well,
comfortable when they say they want to serve.
Packet that I sent out to the cluster deans includes job descriptions from the bylaws, plus the terms of office, 3 years, and you can do it twice and things like that. So that's very clear part of when people are asked what, if they will serve, and they come back with well, what is it I'm going to do? We can tell them directly, and for how long and how many times they can do it.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Yes, Sally. And then we will have Rudra, and then we will have Marietta.
I'm sorry, I would wait my turn.
Go right ahead.
Is it possible to know when these committees are likely to meet? Since I'm a bivocational minister, I'm often busy during the day, but I can certainly meet in the evening. In fact, I would volunteer for any of these committees that meet, very late afternoon or evening.
I would offer at this point that because of our experience through the pandemic, many of the committees have been meeting virtually and with much greater success and attendance than they did when we were trying to schedule live meetings in various locations. I personally would encourage that practice to continue because it does make it much more possible. It's an evening setup. They tend to be shorter by virtual. So, but I can't answer that because the committees choose chairs or have one voted. And I see Jason, what do you got?
I thought Dr. Marietta was up first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure. Marietta, please.
Okay, thank you. When I did hear you mention about the one position open for the conference, and I heard you say, is it Tuthill?
That is correct. Tuthill. It is a commission that oversees the distribution of funds. Molly, perhaps you could talk a little bit more to the Tuthill. It's kind of a mysterious group.
Mhm. The Tuthill Commission uses the income from a significant bequest from many years ago to support mostly overseas mission projects. And they have a granting process. And the commission reviews those invites those applications, reviews those grants, and grants those monies, but it's overseas missions.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you.
Rudra?
My connection was breaking up. I wanted to mention that the CMA has several openings that are currently vacant on the conference ODM committee, and I don't remember, I didn't hear if Roger mentioned that.
What?
How many positions do we have, Rudra?
CMA, I believe, has 4 or 6 positions. I don't remember, and most of them are vacant.
Roger, did you hear Rudra?
I did hear him, and his comment highlights an issue that I've encountered in many instances, that absences are not necessarily being reported. And so that some of them are coming as new news at a time like this, which is awkward.
Yeah.
Bill.
Yeah.
Rudra, we'll follow up with you on that. I'm sorry. We'll make sure, and we can include that in the ballot that we send out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Bill.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rudra.
Yeah, Reverend Roger, from your earlier comments, did you say that you already sent packages to cluster deans or that you proposed to?
No, I did. About a month ago, roughly that, requesting their assistance to pass it along to local church pastors. I didn't want the deans to do all the work. With 2 concerns within that. One, that we maintain a good diversity of representation, and to emphasize that we were looking for lay involvement primarily.
Okay.
Mhm.
Cluster 4
That's
has
what's
been
been
essentially, cluster 4 has been essentially inactive. Okay, and I will,
That's been one of the issues that we've faced.
right. I will get into that, and I will find out, get the package from the cluster dean and make sure it gets circulated around.
Thank you, Bill.
Can I offer a process suggestion for this call, Regina?
Certainly. Thank you.
Yeah. No, folks, I think you got a sense we've got a lot of openings and we need people to fill them. I mean, that's the long and short of this story. And Roger, sent out a number of communications. I know I'm guilty of this and that I did not respond or do any of the networking that I had hoped to do. But I think the best way to kind of get some of these positions filled is for us on this call to prayerfully consider, where we can serve. We've got church and ministry. We've got justice and witness. We've got congregational life. We've got openings in the Illinois conference. We've got the nominating committee. I would just invite everybody on this call, because you are the leaders of CMA, to put in the chat where you're willing to serve. And then Roger can collect this information, fill in some blanks, and then can do further work with the cluster deans to fill the vacancies. Because I don't think we're going to be able to do it on this call, is what I'm saying. And it's already, 12:15, and we've got a lot of miles to travel, and we got a rest of our Saturdays out there. And I got a wedding I got to do later today. So I'm going to have to sign off shortly.
I'll put my email in the chat so that anyone so disposed or who knows somebody else who is will get in touch with me. I can talk to them and fill them in on the blanks.
Yeah. And we can download the chat and pass it on to Roger. So I'm volunteering myself to serve on nominating to help fill these positions the next go around and to work on that. I'm going to be terming off of congregational life because I served there for a long time. So we'll need new leadership there. So I encourage those of you that are willing to help plan our gatherings and bring educational resources to the church to serve on congregational life. That's my appeal to you. But please put where you can serve in the chat. And then let's get to work to fill some of these openings, because I think that's the way we can support the CMA is by doing that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for your prayers and praying to serve. It's awesome, and you get to meet wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people that you might not get to meet if you don't serve on the committees. You get to learn a lot about the United Church of Christ and the CMA by serving. So I ask that you be prayerful about serving. Thank you.
And I just noticed Pastor Michelle's offer on conference justice and witness. Thank you very much. Sally, I've got yours. And I will, Daryl, I'll give you a call and talk about what's available.
There you go.
And Bill McCarthy on congregational life.
Thank you. While you're still discerning, we will now, thank you so very much, Roger. Is there anything else that you wish to speak to regarding nominations? And then we'll have Gil first, and then we'll move to Roger.
Well, I appreciate the energy that's coming forth at this point. I really do. And for everybody's help. Thanks.
Thank you, Gil.
I just had a question. Are we going to basically do the voting via email, or do you have an idea?
After the slate is completed, we will have to vote electronically.
Okay, because Roger, if you don't know how to do that, I can help you out with that.
Thank you.
I'll give you a call.
Okay, so we can set that up and make it easier. And that way we can account that only those that are supposed to vote are voting.
Thank you so much.
As we were discussing this, the only thing that occurred to me was that we would have to call a special meeting of the association to do it. But I would like not to have to go through that particularly. So anyway, thanks, Gilbert.
If we get the positions filled, we can vote electronically.
Yeah.
Thank you, Reverend Gil, for that. Thank you. If there's nothing further, Roger, thank you so very much. Once we get the positions filled, we will notify you when that ballot will go out so that you might be looking for it. And then there will be a date when that ballot will need to be returned. And Roger and his team will work on that, and they will let us know who will be filling those new spaces. And then after the annual celebration in October, everyone will begin their positions after that time. Thank you so very much. Molly, we will have remarks from Molly, and then she will give us the benediction. Thank you so very much for everything that you have done, for your patience. I know we went a little longer, but it was well worth it. Thank you for the music. Thank you a special thanks to Andre D. Mesquita with Fred Conrad. Thank you to Jason for your reflection. Thank you to Stephanie for healing the church. Thank you to Gil for healing the people. Thank you for Joseph Lua from Montclair for your Beautiful selection. Thank you, Larry, for a stewardship moment. And thank you, Roger, for nominations. Thank you all very, 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 very much for all you do and for who you are and how you represent Jesus Christ. And so we thank you so very, very, very much. I see a hand from Tangi. Is that a question, Tangi?
I just want to thank you for your leadership
Yes.
for the past 2 years. It's been great and we really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. This is a job. It's a village. I can't do anything without each of you. We all pray for each other and we have all worked hard. So it's my honor. I'm very humbled by what the opportunity to serve. And so blessings to you and thank you so very much. Molly.
Thank you. Thank you all for spending your Saturday together, doing the work of the church and being community together. God is still at work. God is still speaking. There is still work to do. And we are all called together to do it. It's a really hard season to be in ministry. As a lay leader, as a clergy person, as anyone committed to being in community. Community has been splintered and segregated and separated and fearful. And it's the pandemic, but it's also the political environment. It's the fear that permeates our culture right now. And so I'm so appreciative of the time spent in thinking about mental health and taking care of ourselves as we take care of others. It's so important to keep that balance and to, in order to be able to fulfill our calling as God's people, sharing God's love, sharing testament to God's unconditional love and the way that in community we really strive to live into that unconditional love that we know from God. There's so many in our world and in our communities that are struggling, including, and sometimes it's those of us, we need to be caring for ourselves so we can be ready to be caring for those who are struggling and need to hear the good news, need to know how to rely on God, need to know how to call upon community. There's a hunger for belonging, and that's what we offer, right? If in our best moments. And so to remain in our best moments, we need to continue to care for ourselves. So I want to thank you for spending this time today. I hope you have some time to take care of yourself today, this week, this month, this year, because I know God's calling is on each of your lives to make a difference. And that's powerful and important work. And you have to do to take care of yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, to be able to do what God needs for each of us to be doing. So not to take any more time other than to say, ministry is powerful. There is good things going on in the conference. It's a great time to be serving on conference or CMA committees. We are poised to really be making a difference. And so I thank you for all that you do. And I offer in benediction, may God bless you and keep you. May God's face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And may God give you peace. Amen.
Amen. Go in peace. Thank
Amen.
you, everyone.
God bless you.
Blessings,
Amen.
Blessings. Blessings.
God bless you.
No, this is great.